I rise in support of this legislation. And I think first and foremost, what I want to say is something to our dear friend, Senator Jones. I love you, and I am so proud of you, and I'm so proud of our friendship. And I know I speak for every single person in this room when I say that we are so proud of you and your service to this state and who you are as a person and the strength and the courage that you have. And I can only imagine how proud your parents are of you. But many in this chamber are raising young kids, and some of them are here a lot in this process. And my oldest is 8, and I'm thinking of her today. There's been a lot of debate on the floor, and I think it's important to highlight some things that we can all agree on. And that's that every parent here loves their children. Everyone here wants the best for their child. Growing up today is very hard. Raising kids today is so challenging on so many levels, no matter what your worldview is. I worry all the time about what we're leaving them, what it's going to be like, and how can I protect them? How can we protect them? How can we shield them? How can we enshrine their innocence for just a little while longer? It's pretty hard. You turn on the news for 5 minutes and it's stripped from them. You know what I'm talking about. In these uncertain times, our default position should be to trust parents, to do what's best for their children. Teachers, administrators, principals, and guidance counselors, dedicated professionals, love them. I have no doubt about that. This isn't about that. No one will ever love your child, though, more than you love them as a parent. And the purpose of this bill is to involve parents in decisions made concerning their children. As a state and a country, we have codified how important parental rights are. It is, in fact, perhaps the oldest of the recognized fundamental liberties protected by the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. Wisconsin v. Yoder says the primary role of the parents is the upbringing of their children, and it is now established beyond debate as an enduring American tradition. Santosky v. Kramer, the fundamental liberty interest of natural parents in the care, custody, and management of their child does not evaporate simply because they have not been model parents. Members, this bill follows these precedents. This bill says, parents, your right to raise your children does not end when they walk into a classroom. This bill recognizes that parents are not the enemy. Let's talk about what this bill does substantively. The bill does two things, and I like to really, for me, it's important to do so to make sense of things and for the light bulb to go off. But when I actually took the time to sit down and read this bill, I thought I knew what I wanted to talk about, right? A while ago when this issue started coming up, but I realized what I was doing was listening to the rhetoric outside and on the news, and when I took the time to actually read the language and to take time and study the staff analysis, I boiled it down to two very, very basic things, and it's age-appropriate learning timelines, and it's parental notification. And there's an exception for abuse, abandonment, and neglect. There will be harm to the child through notification, there's an exception to that. And I would hope that these ideas, there would be broad support on these concepts. And I believe that there is on foundational principle. I do. The portion of this bill that we've discussed the most and has given us a lot of heat, but not as much light, and that's the part that's been incredibly stigmatized. And I believe that it's our job as legislators to correct the record and to act on legislation and not the rhetoric. What we hear a lot about this bill is what I call, and I'll throw another legal term out there, it's an argumentum ad absurdum. It's taking an argument to its most extreme position, arguing what one thinks the bill does versus what it actually does. And this is sad, a local reporter on a TV, I just saw this the other day, said, what does this bill actually do? And then walked through it. And it's sad because that was so refreshing. I'm sitting there watching it, it's like, why is that the exception to the rule in reporting sometimes these days? It identified and we can disagree on the merits of legislation, and that's great, and that's what we're here to do. But to have somebody actually take the time to try to instruct and inform others of what's actually here, that was impressive. And I wish that happened more often. Because the portion of the bill simply says that there should be an age limit on certain discussions. It's not a new concept, nor is it radical or new. Do we teach Macbeth or Romeo and Juliet to kindergartners? We don't. And it isn't because we're opposed to Shakespeare. It's because we recognize that there are certain topics that are not appropriate for a child that's 10 years or younger. Do we try to teach algebra or trigonometry to a 6-year-old? No, because they're too young to comprehend the higher level math. Heck, I'm still struggling comprehending that. Whether a child is gay or straight, 5 or 6 years old, should not be discussing sexual orientation. As a 6-year-old, I, along with many of my colleagues, probably thought girls still had cute cooties. And as a third grader or kindergartner, if you ask one of them where a baby comes from, they're probably going to tell you it's the stork. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with letting children hold on to their innocence for just a few more years, because once it's gone forever. It's okay to let a little boy want to be Captain America and a little girl wanting to be Rapunzel. It's okay for children to be children for just a little while longer. Kindergartners should be learning their numbers and letters. They should be playing together. Those are the conversations we should be having. Sex ed starts in the 4th grade at basic level. That is when we have decided that children are old enough to start having these conversations as a state. This bill does nothing more than codify that. Surely it isn't unreasonable for those topics to wait until then. And why? We were asked why. This did come up, and I think it is important to always put context to something and why. There are many other issues we could be discussing, we could be identifying, we could be ensuring or not happening within classrooms, and I'm happy to start having those discussions down the road, but what we have is a bill before us today. And why? There is a reality, and there is an effort to inject these types of discussions into younger and younger age groups. As a parent of 3 young children, my wife and I see it every week, if not nearly every day. It's happening. Tell me it's not. It's our job as a parent, and the appropriate means and method of an instruction timeline at such a young age is ours to decide, not anybody else's. And the state in its arms cannot and should not take that right away from us as parents. That's it. That's what this is about. Of course, there are times when families are not perfect, and some parents are not good parents, no matter how much we may want it to be otherwise. And that is, I think, an under-discussed part of this bill. There are exceptions for children who would be put in danger. There are exceptions for children who would be faced with abuse, abandonment, and neglect with the topics that we have here. And that has not changed and will never change. And if anyone has concerns about strengthening families, I'll be the first in line to work on you with that issue, I promise you. Members, this is a tough issue, and emotions have been running high, and while I do not agree with the arguments being made by opponents of the bill, I appreciate the passion that everyone has for this issue. I always do. They want and believe what is best for their children, and I know that to be true. But those of us who are supporting this bill also want what we believe is best for our children. We want that opportunity and right as well. There is no hidden motive here, and there is no secret agenda, and that's why I feel comfortable voting for this bill. I don't believe anybody on this floor has bad intentions or wants to do something that makes life more difficult for any child. If I thought that this bill targeted a particular group of students, I'd press the red button. I'm voting in favor of this bill because I believe in our parents. This bill says parents have rights. It does not discriminate, and it does not silence anyone. My children are taught to love everyone, to embrace our differences, and to embrace diversity for its beauty. It says simply that there is a time and a place for certain conversations. I'm voting for this bill because I believe that the overwhelming vast majority of parents love their children and will always love them. Parents are not the enemy of a student. They are a student's best advocate. Our default position as a state has to and should remain trust a child's parents.